Hello everyone, both YouTube viewers and the people watching in my science engineering class. My name is James Ron, and I'm here to show off CogoVille, the city of the future. Or at least a model of it that I've made in Feed the Beast, which is a mod pack for Minecraft. So let's get started. The primary source of power for CogoVille will be thermal solar. Ignore all the snow and stuff. As I said, it's just a model, so ignore any discrepancies you come across. Okay? Now, thermal solar. The way thermal solar works is it's quite simple. Rays of sunlight hit these mirrors, these reflective mirrors, and they heat up water, which turns it into steam, which allows us to drive a steam turbine. Now, the thing is, this is just a model. In the actual CogoVille, instead of using water, we'll be using molten salt. And the reason for this is because even though molten salt has a lower specific heat capacity than water, at a heat capacity of only 1.5 joules per gram degrees Celsius instead of 1.8, it can exist in liquid form at higher temperatures, whereas water boils off and becomes steam at 100 degrees Celsius. Molten salt becomes a liquid starts off as a solid, becomes a liquid at 142 degrees, and then can stay liquid without melting up to 540 degrees. So in the end, you can end up storing a lot more energy with it. So that's the reason we're using molten salt, because we need to be able to store the energy. Because if you store the molten salt in a tank, it means you only need to use it when you have to. So we got the molten salt or steam in this iron tank here, stored up. Then when we need the energy, we simply pump the molten salt and use it to heat up some water, make the water instantly evaporate, like a flash boil, and then the flash boiling water goes up and starts to drive a steam turbine. Good, so that's how that's going to work. Now, I want to take a short detour, and we're going to talk about how CogoVille is going to work as a society. Well, CogoVille, like any good new like any first world Western society, especially a city in Australia, will primarily have a service-based economy. So, teaching and all sorts of stuff like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we won't also have a few other types of businesses. For example, we might have some manufacturing and stuff on the side. And as you can see, the power works really well for these industry machines and stuff. So that is a plus. Good job. Now, another thing about the tanks is that it allows us to keep a steady input of electricity day in, day out. That's why we need to be able to store the solar energy, so you can smooth out the ebbs and flows between day and night and peak and off-peak and all sorts of stuff like that. Okay, now what about the house? Well, you'll have to follow a few rules when you have a house in CogoVille. First of all houses in CogoVille require one of two things on your roof. You're either going to need to have your own solar panels over your roof, or if you would like to, and if your house is structurally stable enough, you can opt instead to have a rooftop garden with at least one tree on top of it. And that way, you're either generating your own electricity to prevent carbon emissions, or you're offsetting it by having a tree to collect the carbon. Okay? So that's pretty good. Now let's talk about waste disposal in CogoVille. CogoVille will have a very interesting waste disposal system. Residents can simply take their garbage and throw it off into the bin. Okay? Then the garbage will be sent off or taken eventually by a dump truck, but we just got this pneumatic tubes for the moment for our demonstration. Will be taken off to be recycled. So as you can see, the junk is being recycled, it's being turned into scrap. or biofuel. Okay, the garbage is recycled and turned into biofuel as much as possible. Then the biofuel is used for two main purposes. Half of it will be used to continue generating more electricity for the city. You can see the scrap is going into the generator and is going to start helping power the city. Good to know. Now, the rest of the scrap is going down this pipeline into this chest here. Now, what is this chest for? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's talk about transport in CogoVille. CogoVille is going to have one main transport system. We're not going to have any roads for cars. We're going to have some walkways, although they'll probably be a bit bigger than this in the actual CogoVille. We're going to have some walkways for people, but apart from that, there's no private transport in CogoVille. There are no cars, there are no electric cars, unfortunately. We're just going to be having full train service. Now, these trains will be, they'll be driver driven by a human, and they'll take you around the city, and they'll take you in and out. They'll do all sorts of things, whatever you want, just like the trains in Melbourne do. But they'll also, very importantly, anyone who wants to get in or out of this city is going to find it pretty hard because they have their own little cars and stuff, and, they need somewhere to get into the city. So, where the train meets up with other cities, what the train will do is, at those train stations, there'll be massive car parking spaces where people can park their cars and take a train into CogoVille. If people want to take a train through CogoVille and go somewhere else, well, then unfortunately, they're either going to have to drive around or get someone else, or, pay a fee to be able to drive, I don't know, through a more remote area of CogoVille. Now, the reason we have this chest here receiving all this scrap is because then we can use half of that biofuel, that scrap, to help fuel our trains. So, I'm just going to show you guys. Simply put the scrap in here to be burned. Of course, you will need some water. Now, for the moment, we don't really have that much. Water, but in the final CogoVille, water shouldn't be too hard to find, and the trains will go just fine. So now we can move around CogoVille. There we go, moving around CogoVille just fine. And that's all good. Fine and dandy. Good. Now, that's about all there is to CogoVille. Apart from that, you can live and work in CogoVille, do whatever you want, do whatever you would normally do. Feed your go to your local store. There will be stores and stuff. They'll be powered by the main electricity as well. Although hopefully they'll probably also have to install solar panels or something in order to try and help themselves gain energy. You'll be able to go to your stores, cook your food with the electricity available, and all sorts of stuff, but it will always be supplemented by your own internal supply of energy from your solar panels on your house, unless you've opted to instead put a tree on your house. Thank you for watching. My name is James Ryan, and I have been your host. Peace out.